Hey there vinyl junkies, welcome back to another one of our top 1000 vinyl videos. And today I've decided to go back on the rewind, back to the late 80s, early 90s, and the sort of the underground dancey, sort of trancey scene that was there just at the point that it was breaking through into the mainstream. It's kind of hard to believe, given how big dance music is now, that this wasn't always the case. And back in the 80s, certainly, dance music was seen, certainly by the people in charge, as being this weird, anarchic, dangerous underground, almost like a cult. Basically, they didn't understand young people, and it really did show. And I've picked 3 groups that came out of this scene and made it really big and carried on going. Certainly, at least one of these groups is still on the go now. But the first group that I've picked is the Orb, and I've picked out Orblivion. Now, all of the Orb's albums had a kind of a play on Orb in the title, and we've got this kind of 3D computer-generated style artwork on the cover here. Now, you know my rule on if they come in cellophane, I leave them in the cellophane because I don't really want them to get damaged. So this is still in the cellophane, but it's not actually a gatefold. But we do have 2 LPs in here. So we'll see on the inner sleeve what we've actually just got is some basic designs and a little bit of track listing and the obligatory thanks and telling you who the Orb are. They're L.X. Patterson, Andy Hughes and Thomas Failman. But because it's spread across 2 discs, we get a really good sound quality, which is really good if you were playing these on the decks at the rave. You wanted really good sound quality coming through the sound system. But what we've got on this, we've got... well, let's have a look. Let's see what standout Orb tracks have we got. Well, Toxygene, of course. This is the album that Toxygene is off. And it's like, well, my word, if there was one track that you saved from a fire and took with you to that desert island that Kirsty Young keeps going on about in Desert Island Discs, then I think Toxygene would be that track to take. But we've also got Asylum on here as well. And a whole bunch of other tracks too, and that doesn't detract from those other tracks, just it weren't necessarily big singles. We've got things like Delta Mark II, Ubiquity, Asylum, Bedouin, Molten Love, PI, SALT, 72, Log of Deadwood, Secrets and Passing of Time. And quite a lot of these tracks really are, well, they're a mix really. Some of them are incredibly long. Passing of Time, 9 minutes 27 seconds. Secrets 5 minutes 40, Molten Love 6 minutes 41, but then we've got some desperately short tracks as well. PI is only 1 minute 10, 72 is actually 6 seconds long. That probably has to stand a chance of going down as one of the shortest tracks ever commercially released. I think that's... Napalm Death did do an album. I have heard of that album. I don't have it because I really do object to paying 14 quid for an album whose sum total of track lengthing adds up to less than a minute, but I think they were going for a record or something. But that's a great album there, and certainly they were big on the acid house and the underground warehouse scene. Now, another album here I've got, this started to become more mainstream, and it was there at the emergence of acid house into the mainstream. We're still in the 1980s with this record, 1989, and this is Quadrastate by 808 State. And we've got the sort of, well, very basic graphics, but this we have to remember is the 1980s. So what we don't have is massive amounts of CG. Everything that you see has to kind of be very painstakingly and carefully created in a graphic design studio, usually out of shuffling bits of cardboard around. Now on here we've only got 6 tracks, but again they're really, really long. We've got Pacific State, which was the big track, and when you listen to Pacific State, go and find it on YouTube and listen to it. It is kind of like the soundtrack to the acid house scene of the late 1980s. Certainly also, I think it was used in the soundtrack of certainly something like Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. If you go and, if you're familiar with that game, have a listen to the 80s radio station that's within that game. But we've got a theme again going on this, a state theme. So we've got Pacific State, Disco State, State to State, and State Ritual, along with 2 other tracks, Firecracker and 106. There's not a lot else really to be seen in this package. We've got a very plain slipcase and a very basic, almost underground, home-pressed label style to the inside of the record, well, to the record label. There's not really a lot here, and actually I only found a lot out about 808 State much later when Wikipedia turned up, and certainly at the time that I had this album I knew nothing really much about them except that this was a great album. The final album that I've picked out today is, it comes from the Prodigy. Oh yes, they had to feature in here, and the Prodigy still on the go, but I decided to go right back on the rewind here, and this is their first full-length album release. Certainly there was odd bits of material before this. I remember a lot of white label 12-inch singles floating around the club scene, but this was at the point really that they kind of crossed over into the mainstream, sort of, and they were certainly there, the pioneers of making dance music and rave culture more acceptable and more popular. The big singles off this that I do remember, let's have a look. Your Love, Charlie, Trip into Drum and Bass, and this is a track that really sorts the men from the boys when it comes to stereos. If Charlie, Trip into Drum and Bass does not blow your mind, then you need a better stereo, because this really does test your bass bins to the limit. You don't so much hear Charlie as feel it. But if you've got a rubbish sound system, you will not hear anything and you will not feel anything. And you will feel inadequate. You will feel that you have to step out there into the outside world and buy yourself a damn decent stereo. I mean, come on, they're not expensive. Oh, just going off on one there. We've also got Everybody in the Place, 155 and Rising, Wind It Up, Jericho. This is just a great album. It really brought back the feel of those sort of impromptu warehouse, acid house rave gigs back into the mainstream. We've got quite basic graphics on here. Indeed, it's just their logo. And, you know, I can remember this would be sort of stuck on a label, on a white label promo that you'd get doing the rounds on the underground scene. So it's nice that they kept that identity. And on the back we've got the band picture, and this is Keith Flint before he went weird. That's what he looked like before he went weird. There's almost a hippie vibe to them. Liam Howlett was the brains behind the Prodigy. The others were really just dancers, and that really does hark back to their humble beginnings on the rave scene. That they had dancers as part of the group, because a lot of it was electronic samples and loops and stuff. But certainly later on, certainly Keith Flint became more part of the band because he became the vocals, and Max in Reality did go off, and I do remember seeing a solo album. I don't think it did very well, never heard it. It's probably why it didn't do very well. It probably wasn't all that great. Inside we've got these lovely artsy images of the band there, so we can see this sort of stylised artsy images, and Keith Flint, he looks almost like some kind of hippie pioneer going out into the wilderness to his dope plantation or something. But let's have a look now. Inner sleeves, well, they're just plain paper, and the records themselves have very basic label information on the middle, and again hark back to the early white labels that used to run around the scene. But a great and deserving album, and certainly one that really does belong in this top 1000 vinyl record collection. Now, I hope that has been informative for you. I hope you've enjoyed those selections. A little bit unusual there, and certainly harking back to when I was a lot younger and used to go out and see bands and groups and raves. Oh, Mum, I didn't honestly, I didn't go there. Didn't do any of that. But anyway, you take very good care of yourself. Don't forget to share this video and like it too, and subscribe to the channel as well. And tell all your friends about this series, because it's really important that we get as many people as we can watching these to suggest other options that we can have for filling out this 1000 greatest vinyl videos. So leave your comments down there below. And anyway, until next time, vinyl junkies, keep those records spinning. And this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying take care, bye for now.